Hi, Roz. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you, Carmen? Welcome back again to another one of our podcasts. And today we're going to be talking about our acronyms in our field of linguistics and education, and also in our ESL and EFL, ELL, CLD, and TEL, which is all teaching English language learners, and what those acronyms mean and how they evolved over time.
That's right. Well, it's been a hectic couple of weeks, as you know, because of family issues and such, but we're back at
We're
last.
back. Yes, we're back. We're back. And I'm
Okay,
glad to be back. So here is what we're going to be talking about today. The importance of those acronyms, like I mentioned before, and how they evolved over time, the evolution of those acronyms, what the future holds for ESL, EFL, ELL, TELL, and CLD, and what we foresee coming in the future with this. So we're going to start with the basic English as a second language. And this is what I think most people know of, Carmen, and how it all began. So it's based on the assumption that someone speaks one language, but the reality is now people speak more than one language. So it's not
that's true.
English as a second language. It could be English as a third, fourth, fifth, or sixth language, depending. But I understand how this first began. That's how it all started, English is a second language. And then that acronym kind of evolved and changed.
That's true. It actually started as, especially in the United States and Canada, right? Where
Yeah.
students would come from abroad and they were in this immersive, if you like, situation. But it has evolved because there are so many different options nowadays, right? So
Yes.
let's move on to English as a foreign language, which would be the context in which I am, right? Okay,
Yes.
so we teach students, Spanish students, mostly Spanish students, although because right now we live in a globalized world, and because there are so many people from Eastern Europe, Africa, and so forth that have come to Spain and that are looking for new opportunities. But this would basically be our situation, both at high school and at my level, where, as you know from before, we're a language exclusive teaching institution. So students come to our school to learn English and French. English as a foreign language or French as a foreign language. Okay, so these are people with whatever language as a background, but they're coming to learn English. Okay?
Yes. And most of the time also in context in some other nations that they start teaching English in other places in fourth grade.
Yes,
From fourth grade. And it becomes just like we would learn Spanish or French here in our K-12 school system, or German, or
exactly.
any of the other languages that are offered. It's the same concept that it would be, but it's not holistically the language of the area or the context. So
Exactly. Okay. So ELL. I think this is more an American term, don't you?
yes, English language learners. So that's the evolving from ESL, especially when we realize that kids could speak more than one language, so it's not just as a second language, it could be as their fourth or fifth. They adjusted that to just say they're just English language learners. So then this is the more common acronym that you will see now being used in mostly the K-12 educational system here in the United States and Canada as well. You will see that also being used to identify students who just happen to speak are learning English. So
Okay.
now we call them ELLs.
Okay. And
Mhm.
TELL.
TELL is more in teaching English learners, and this is more and more at the higher education level. So most now that you would see this happening in for certification in teaching ELLs in the public
Mhm.
school systems here or private school sector, your teachers will be teaching English learners. So the programs have now adopted, it used to be ESL, get a certification in ESL, get a certification in ELL, but now it's TEL, get your licensure for teaching English learners, because you don't necessarily teach just K-12, you can teach adults also. So that has evolved in the higher ed perspective in this generalized of teaching English.
Roz, do you think that this is applicable just to the United States, or do you think that it's gone worldwide?
I think it may have gone worldwide because I've noticed
Okay.
a lot of different other universities overseas have also adopted the TEL aspect. Like in
Okay.
South Korea, some of their programs at their universities, they have also used the acronym of TEL. And also in Saudi Arabia, where we met, they've also
Okay.
adjusted their programs to say TEL, teaching English learners, because it kind of broadens the aspect and it kind of umbrellas, I think, better than
Okay.
previous acronyms. So it's a big umbrella. So now I think I've seen that kind of stretch out there.
Okay. Excellent. How about this one? CLD.
CLDs, now culturally linguistically diverse. There's been a big push here, at least I can say in the United States, to being more culturally responsive in the classroom, because we know by the year of 2050, the classroom is going to be looking very different than what we're accustomed to. It's going to be a variety of cultures, a variety of languages, a variety of everything, which is great. And so now it's like, okay, culturally, linguistically diverse, because we're not just have the kids are not just going to be having to learn English and learn, but also culture and various cultures and different cultures melting and meshing together. So the culture has become important, and it has played a role of how we approach learning and transfer learning. So this is how this acronym has caught on recently, CLD. Primarily, you still see ELLs mostly, but you will see some places referring to CLD, like the Department of Education, OLEA, Office of English Language Acquisition in Washington, D.C., has also used this acronym, because now we know how much culture does play a part in language, in transferring language and language acquisition. So they have adopted this acronym as well. So now you will tend to see CLD and ELL simultaneously being used.
Well, don't you think that this is a big step forward? Because well, culture has always been there for ever so many years. As you know, my PhD was on culture and language learning in the foreign language classroom. And
Mhm.
this is something that has been studied forever, basically, since we started teaching languages, from the Second World War and so forth. And it's become increasingly more important because we're noticing that it's not just about learning the language, it's about learning the language in specific contexts, and it's about misunderstandings, cultural misunderstandings. And in this world that is so conflictive nowadays, with all of this strife about wars and so forth, that we need our future generations to be culturally aware of how you express yourself and how not to offend a party that you are working with in order to reach a common goal. And so somehow being able to express yourself and not offend the person, somebody at a meeting, is truly important so that you reach an understanding mm, dialectally, and the discourse is positive in order to try to avoid in the future like wars and conflicts and a way of problem resolution, don't you think?
Yes, exactly. And to kind of add on to that, we've realized with the universal design for learning model, which is multiple means of engagement and expression, multiple means of assessment, multiple means of representation. You know, we've learned that language is one barrier to learning, could be a barrier to learning, and having to remove that barrier, and that, you know, through the different strategies that they use through teaching ELLs. However, that they understood that cultural barriers exist,
Hmm.
and becoming more culturally relevant and culturally aware is key to remove any barriers to anyone's learning, you know, and how those cultures may play out in the classroom, and the misconceptions and misunderstandings that some cultural relevances, if you're not aware, or
Hmm.
nuances, you're not aware of those, that it could play and become barriers to learning in the classroom. So yes, it has
Exactly.
really evolved in that means, and it's a positive, it's a plus, it's a
Definitely.
good thing.
And now that you've mentioned UDL, it's something that in Europe, you know, because in the United States, I think is a step forward with regards to Europe in that sense. I mean, in Spain, we're just starting to work on a project now at my school on a universal design for learning applied to adults, because in the past we've used UDL with primary and secondary schools, and but at an adult level we haven't really focused on aspects of UDL, and not just UDL, but also EI, you know, emotional intelligence and social and emotional learning contexts, where adults come to the class, they receive their hour or 2 hours or 2 hours and a half of language training, and then they leave, but you don't really get to know them. You don't really know their backgrounds. You don't really know what they bring to the classroom, which could be rich, which could be conflict, a student that isn't responding because either they're not understanding what the curriculum is, or simply because they're blocked because there's so much mm, mm, background interference because of their personal situation at home, for instance, that is
Mm-hmm.
interfering with their advancement in their studies. So there are so many things that come into play with adults that have been treated with primary school and secondary school, but haven't really been researched with regards to adults. And that's something that we're working on right now at the school.
And that sounds very exciting. And that again goes back to that cultural capital, you know,
Yeah,
that theory of Bourdieu's theory of cultural capital, and what we bring to the classroom or in our learning environment could play key in how
yes,
we are going to receive our learning
definitely.
and
I'm
transfer.
really excited to see like how our results, our academic results with our students evolve this year with regards to previous years, to see whether or not our application of aspects of UDL, EI, mindfulness,
Mhm.
and in general, neuroscience, and these new tendencies in education, whether or not they really do produce a better academic achievement in our students. That's something that we're looking forward to studying and witnessing the results.
I think
Okay,
that's
so let's
exciting to
move on
see.
then.
So, yes, so if you are interested in listening more to our podcast, we say support our cause. We have an Education Matters campaign that's going on. And if you use the code first time 23 on bonfire.com and search Education Matters, you will see our merchandise line to support our cause. We have t-shirts and hats and bags and water bottles, everything there, and you'll get 25% off when you use the first time 23 code. So if you are liking our podcast and like to hear all the topics that we're talking about, and like our campaign about Education Matters, support the cause and get a t-shirt.
Thanks, Ross.
You're welcome.
Okay, and stay tuned for next the week after next, right? We said it
Yes,
was October the
October
30th, where
30th.
we'll be
It's the
talking about
Halloween
culture.
weekend here. Maybe I might dress up, Carmen. Who knows?
Oh, cool. So will
Yeah,
I. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
let's do that. Okay. For the
yes.
Halloween weekend, because it's a long weekend here as well.
Yes. So we
Okay.
shall be talking about culture a little
Yes.
bit more in depth. We kind of touched here a little bit on it, but we're going to really dive into it in that podcast.
Okay. Well,
See you
see
next
you on
time.
October the 30th. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye. Okay.